in your business, and that is going to equal more money in your pocket and more free time. So if that sounds good to you, then you are in the right place. First of all, if you have not been to our site before I jump in today's show, you got to head over to nextlevelwholesaling.com. And if you haven't taken the assessment, you got to do it. My mentor created it for me so I can get more clarity, get more power, make more money, have more free time. That's why I call it the No Limits Real Estate Investing Podcast. And so you got to take it. It's completely free. It's going to rate you in the 4 main areas of your wholesaling business. And once you take it, it's going to give you actually a lot about what I'm talking today, right? Clarity and power, and really the way to get more money in your pocket so that you could have more freedom. All right, so let's get back to today's episode and getting more clarity and power in your business. So I had a joint venture partner call me today, and he was a little frustrated about his progress and really thought the market was changing and really was just confused in a fog. And I don't know if you've ever felt that way, but I have. And really I said, okay, let's break this down. I said, how much money have you made in the last 90 days? He's like, I don't know, about $50,000 or $60,000. And I said, well, you think 50 or 60? You know, 50 or 60, or a little bit more, a little bit less? And he's like, well, I don't know. I think like 50 or 60. I said, okay, well, that's the first problem. I said, okay, well, tell me about your activity, right? How many calls have you made in the last 90 days, right? How much have you averaged per day? I don't know. Okay, how many offers? I don't know. And so I said, okay, well, it's really, really hard for me to diagnose what's going on in your business if you don't know any of your numbers, right? He, at one point, was measuring his numbers, something that we use on our scorecard. He was measuring his calls, he was measuring his offers, he was measuring his appointments, and his revenue collected in the last rolling 4 weeks. Now, notice I didn't say month, but the last 4 weeks, because it's a more accurate depiction of what's going on. And the thing about 90 days, it is really, really, really magical. Because what you're experiencing today in your business, and this is what I told him, I said, what you're experiencing today in your business is not what you did last week, not what you did today. If you're working your balls off right now and you're not getting results, really it's not because of what you're doing right now. It's because of what you did 90 days ago. And so it's a funny thing. I said, well, first of all, how come you stopped measuring what you were doing? It's like, oh, we got distracted. We started, getting involved in buying commercial properties and running Airbnbs and going to this new market. And we just got so busy that we stopped doing it. And I'm like, well, that's the first problem. One of someone who I'm going to introduce you to, hopefully next week, a guy named Keith Cunningham. And he said, man, your business is like a big plane, right? And you're riding this plane, and it has these little dials in it, right? Dials are instruments. It tells you where you are going, how fast you're going, how high you are. And I got to tell you, if you don't have those instruments, if your instruments are not working your plane, or you don't know what they say, you know what happens? You die. And I got to tell you what, unlike most newer airplanes today, there is no autopilot in a business, right? You can automate and you can systemize, but really there's no full automation, right? You gotta treat that baby like a child, and you gotta have an airplane that you gotta know the dials, because if you don't know the dials, your business will die. Now, I know many of you say, Todd, I haven't done this and I've been successful. I can tell you, you're probably running around like a chicken with your head cut off. And I have been there, where all of a sudden you're extremely reactive to everything going on in your business. And really, you don't feel like there's any time to plan or prepare or understand the numbers. And I got to tell you, if you don't understand the numbers in your business, you're really doing yourself a disservice. So this is what I told my joint venture partner. I said, number one is I want you to measure how many calls you're making every single day. Number two, I want you to measure how many offers you're sending out every single week. Three, I want to measure how many appointments you are going on. Those are really, really, really good indicators. We call those lead indicators. Why? Because those are within your control. And when you do those things, 90 days from you doing those things consistently, you are gonna start seeing momentum. I promise you. I absolutely promise you. Now, of course, you've got to have good sales skills. You got to learn how to close. And if you have not purchased a no limit selling system, you got to do it. Go to nolimitsalessystem.com/backdoor. And it's going to be one of the best decisions that you're ever going to make, because this is the system that I use to train my acquisition specialist front to back on how to close big, fat, juicy deals, how to increase profit margin, how to really shrink that timeline and really lose the fear of rejection and really that call reluctance. So head on over to nolimitsalessystem.com/backdoor, and the price is embarrassingly low. So getting back to what you got to do, you got to measure those calls, and you got to be making calls every day. You got to be making offers. You got to be going on face-to-face appointments. It is so, so important. And then you got to track that every single week. Now you might be like, Todd, I thought you said to automate. Fine, right? You got to work with your sales team or whoever's making calls to make those calls and measure it and hold your team accountable, because it's not 1 week. Okay. It's not 1 day. It's not 1 month. It's month after month after month. And that's 90 days. You will start to see that momentum and the money will start coming in. But the real momentum, I'm talking about 6 figures, month after month after month after month, doesn't come until after a year. But after a year of you doing this, you're going to have a pipeline that's so full. You're going to have money coming out of your ears if you put in the work and you work on your sales skills and you invest in your business and you stay extremely consistent and you're looking at those dials. Right? Because sometimes you're looking at those dials and everything's going great and you're keeping your team. And let's say you've got a salesperson who's kind of slacking and not coming in. You're going to see it. But guess what? You got to adjust, right? You got to adjust that plane because you're looking at the dials. Or maybe you're slacking off, right? And you're not feeling it. And guess what? You got to adjust those dials. And you may see, you know what, man, I can't make these calls every day. I don't want to do this. I can't make these follow-ups. I don't want to do it anymore. Hey, fine, let's adjust the plane and hire somebody. Build a team. I always say that if you are feeling a feeling of guilt or procrastination, it probably means that something needs to get done, but you're probably the one who shouldn't be doing it. And so that's a topic for another episode. But the work has to get done. It has to get done. And so either you got to do it or somebody else has to do it. And you got to have dials. All right. So long story short, this is not the first time I've dealt with this as joint venture partner. As a matter of fact, the first time we helped pull his business from almost failing, and I got to tell you, it just exploded. And so right now, I know we had the same conversation. We looked at the dials were off, right? Now he's back on track. We tune him up, and all of a sudden, guess what? There are leads in the pipeline. It's going to take him a couple months to get back on track, but I'm telling you, he's going to be making more money than he can count here again in the next 30, 60 days. And so my purpose of this episode is, number one, is if you've screwed up and lost track of your dials, that's okay, right? Put your dials back up and measure where you're going. Get your activity back in order, right? That happens to everybody. Get back on the train. And number two is, if you haven't done it, I'm telling you, trust me, this works. Lastly, I'm going to talk about the power of revenue, because when I asked him, I said, how much money have you made here in the last 90 days? It wasn't like 50 or 60, right? It was more like 30 or 40, right? It was actually $34,320. Okay. And so it was much less than he thought. And so in a way that gave him a lot of power, because he's like, oh man, I feel sick to my stomach. What have I been doing the last 90 days? And having that number in front of you is just so powerful, right? It spurred him into action. And so you got to have your numbers. You got to have a bookkeeper who's keeping track of your books, so you know how much profit you're making every single month. So I hope you enjoyed today's show. Remember, if you haven't invested in the No Limit Selling System, what are you waiting for? You got to do it. Check out nolimitsalessystem.com/backdoor. And let me know in the comments, if you're watching this on YouTube, what dials you like to watch in your business, or if you disagree with this video. If you're listening to this on iTunes or Spotify, hit me up on Instagram at Todd Toback and let me know the dials that you like in your business. And I will talk to you on the next episode.